Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a medieval Poland that brims with bristling upper lips and a measure of pride you probably won't survive if you tried to fake it. The knights of the Polish lands wore their mustaches like a coat of arms. Bold, fluffy, and sometimes truly alarming in size. Their carefully groomed facial hair marked them out as nobles, warriors, and yes, a little bit obsessed with looking dignified even while covered in mud. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself on the rutted, winding road leading to Krakow, hooves clattering against wooden bridges. Polish knights in chainmail sway slightly in their saddles, and if you get close enough, you see it. The glorious mustache. Wide, sometimes drooping, sometimes waxed into a bristle that could rival a startled cat, these mustaches are a language. All their own. A clean-shaven knight? Practically unthinkable here. Your face, if you were a knight, would be expected to show a proud upper lip decoration declaring your status, your courage, your ancestral pride, and your membership in a social group that took itself very seriously. The medieval Polish knight was often called a rycerz, and he took chivalry just as to heart as his French, German, or English counterparts, but with a uniquely local twist. In Poland, your facial hair was nearly as important as your sword. Polish chroniclers recorded contests of knightly strength and, curiously, knightly facial style. People cared about these things. In fact, it was widely believed that your mustache showed the world you had reached a kind of manly ripeness, a combination of age, wealth, and ability to fight. If you were still a squire, you might only grow a slight fuzz, but once you were knighted, out came the spectacular whiskers. Historians still argue whether this standard was enforced by law or by fierce social pressure, but either way, you didn't want to be caught in battle without your proud mustache. Beneath your helmet, the mustache would peek out, a little banner of your masculinity, even after hours of brutal combat. The wind, rain, dust, and occasional goblet of sour beer would stick to it like a fly to honey. But still, you kept it. Polish knights saw the mustache as part of their inherited style, tied to their legendary Sarmatian ancestors, ancient steppe warriors who also wore grand sweeping mustaches. You might even think of it as medieval cosplay, except no one told these warriors they were play acting. Walking through the fortress courtyard, you see squires brushing down horses, while older knights carefully stroke their mustaches, making sure no crumbs from lunch remain. It is a small ritual, but one with so much pride you can't help but grin. One knight grumbles about a squire who tried to trim his mustache too close. Another brags that he waxed the ends of his into perfect curls, ready to show off in the next tournament. These are serious matters, apparently. If you break a lance, that's bad. If you break a mustache, a true scandal. Still, not every knight managed to keep his mustache looking glorious. There were rumors of lice, tangles, and that one knight whose mustache accidentally caught fire by leaning too close to a candle. Gentle sarcasm aside, they valued their facial hair enough to endure these mishaps, considering the mustache the final stamp of knightly identity. If you rode through Poland in the 1300s without one, you'd practically have to apologize at every inn you stopped at. No mustache? Are you really a knight? It was like showing up to a black tie wedding. In sweatpants. Meanwhile, the peasants and villagers you pass look up in awe, and perhaps with a tinge of envy. Most couldn't afford the beeswax or fancy combs needed to maintain such a fine mustache. Their own facial hair was ragged, practical, and probably ignored for months at a time. But you, a knight, had the means to present a perfect set of bristles. letting the entire kingdom know you were someone special. And that feeling, if you're honest, must have been as comforting as a steaming bowl of barley soup on a frigid day. So as you cross the drawbridge into your next adventure, think about that mustache on your upper lip. Imagine the sun hitting its golden brown sweep, a gentle breeze fluttering its wax curls, the onlookers marveling at your manly refinement. There's a reason this Polish knightly tradition still tickles the imagination. It is more than just a funny relic of the Middle Ages. It is a symbol of pride, resilience, and a bit of ridiculousness that makes history oddly comforting. And you, drifting closer to sleep, might find a new respect for men who risked arrows, swords, and public humiliation, all to keep their lip fuzz in perfect order. So let the clip-clop of the horses, the rattle of your chainmail, and the faint scent of wood smoke from distant peasant hearths wash over you as we begin to discover why Polish knights and their mustaches remain one of the more charming footnotes in Europe's medieval tapestry. This is going to be a long, slow ride, one sure to lull you gently into dreams of swooping mustaches, clattering hooves, and maybe, if you're lucky, a cheeky wink from a passing milkmaid who appreciates a good upper lip flourish. You nudge your horse forward under a pale morning sky, and the path leads you through a small Polish village where a curious hush falls over the crowd as you pass. Because on your face, gleaming in the fragile dawnlight, is that magnificent mustache, a marker of your knightly rank, but also a peculiar legal loophole. See, in medieval Poland, the mustache enjoyed a special place in the laws of chivalry. Strangely enough, beards were at times discouraged or even outlawed for knights, considered too unkempt or reminiscent of the peasant class, while the mustache remained proudly legal. Yes, you heard right. A beard could get you scolded at court. But a mustache? That was practically mandatory. You probably wouldn't survive this style rule if you tried to rebel, because knights took it as a matter of personal honor. The statutes known collectively as jus militaris spelled out many things about a knight's expected duties and appearances, but the cultural habits went even further. While no surviving law code specifically demands you wax your mustache to a knife-point curl, social custom functioned like an unspoken law. Historians still argue whether there was ever a royal edict specifically banning beards for knights, or whether it was more of a local aristocratic preference. But one thing is certain, no Polish knight in the mid-1300s wanted to be mistaken for a ragged farmer. You dismount near the village cross, where a few eager boys stare up at your horse, wide-eyed at the glinting armor. They whisper to each other, eyes darting to your upper lip, no doubt memorizing every swirl of your carefully shaped whiskers. You catch their awe and allow a dignified nod, secretly pleased. This is what it means to be a knight here, to be looked upon as a living statue of valor and style. One of them even tries to mimic you, sticking out a faint peach fuzz mustache of his own, earning a playful cuff from an older sister. As you stomp through the mud toward the small wooden inn, you pause to brush off your boots. This isn't just to stay clean, but because the entire image matters: mustache, boots, armor, all polished in harmony. Inside, the innkeeper rushes forward, offering you a mug of honeyed mead, trying not to stare too hard at the handlebar flourish on your face. These people have seen their share of nights pass through, but even the most jaded villager cannot quite hide fascination with that iconic swirl above your lips. Outside, a passing priest gives you a polite nod, but with a hint of wariness. The church sometimes worried these elaborate mustaches were a sign of sinful pride, and yet they couldn't deny the knightly class their traditions. So the tension simmered. A knight's mustache was legal, glorious, and also faintly suspicious to the pious eye. The priest crosses himself and hurries on, leaving you to sip your mead in peace. From your vantage near the inn window, you see other knights ride by, each one sporting a different style. Some favor the long, drooping ends, the kind that catch every breadcrumb in sight. Others trim theirs short and bristly, more like a fox's whiskers. The villagers gossip about them, rating their mustaches as if they were rating prize-winning cows. One woman in the corner even giggles behind her hand, remarking how Sir Bogdan's mustache looked like a startled hedgehog. You finish your drink and stand, preparing to move on, because your reputation depends on showing up at court with your mustache at its best. There, knights will gather to test their skills in tournaments, show off their fine horses, and of course, compare their upper lip masterpieces. These gatherings served as fashion shows for mustaches as much as for gleaming shields. And if you came with a patchy or ill-kempt mustache, you could be laughed out of the list before a single lance was broken. Along the way, squires would be entrusted with maintaining your wax and combs. These young boys became experts in trimming and styling, sometimes more barber than warrior's apprentice. One chronicler joked that a squire who failed at mustache care would never succeed at knighthood, because if you couldn't guard a knight's lip fuzz, how could you guard his back? Gentle sarcasm aside, the point was clear. Even your underlings had to treat the mustache as a holy relic. And yet, while the mustache was a source of pride, it was also the subject of many stories, including the odd legend that a knight's strength was tied to it, much like the biblical Samson and his hair. Historians still argue whether these legends had any basis at all or were just beer hall jokes passed around after a hard day's ride. But if you asked a Polish knight in 1350 whether he'd risk a battle with a bare upper lip, you'd likely get a look of horrified disbelief. The villagers wave as you climb back into the saddle, the late sun catching a gleam of copper from your waxed whiskers. And you ride on, carried by the steady rhythm of hooves and the even steadier rhythm of pride that grows with every stroke of your mustache comb. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the tiny sighs of admiration as you leave the village. Behind, heading toward your next test of arms and facial style. And as night falls, you wonder, was there ever a more wonderfully silly, yet noble, badge of honor than a medieval Polish mustache? Probably not. So keep yours waxed, your saddle dry, and your spirit ready. There is more to this story than a few stray hairs, and your journey is only beginning. You ride on beneath a sky slowly burnishing from pale blue to the deep velvet of dusk, and the rustle of birch trees keeps time with the clink of your armor. There is something deeply reassuring about this steady motion. The horse is gentle. Sway and the faint tickle of your carefully maintained mustache brushing against your upper lip. Because here in medieval Poland, your mustache is not just decoration. It is your symbol of class, your declaration of courage, your shorthand. For everything that makes you a night dot as you pass another village, children peek out from between wooden shutters to catch a glimpse of you. Your silhouette alone, framed by the drooping handlebar mustache, might as well be a sign that peace, or at least chivalry, rides through their town. You rein in near a roadside shrine and let your horse drink from a trough, reflecting on how these simple hairs above your lip could carry such weight. For a Polish knight, the mustache was a shield against suspicion. A clean-shaven man might be mistaken for a boy, or worse, a servant. Your bristling upper lip fuzz marked you as fully initiated into the ranks of noble warriors. Of course, no amount of perfectly waxed hair could save you if you ran from battle, but it was still a powerful first impression. Historians still argue whether the mustache had roots going back to pagan warrior codes, or if it simply grew popular because knights liked the way it looked in paintings. Either way, it was a non-negotiable sign of your courage and readiness. Local villagers knew this. They might never afford fine horses or chainmail, but they watched knightly mustaches with the same interest others reserved for the crowning of kings. It was their chance to witness chivalry made visible. Even a slight tremor in your lip from nerves might ruin the carefully trained sweep of your mustache, and they would talk about it for days. Polish knights learned to keep their faces stoic, their mustaches poised even while a blade swung at their heads. You probably wouldn't survive this code of stoicism if you broke down in tears over a bad trim, but the medieval warrior did, and did it proudly. Some mustaches went beyond style and crossed into symbolism so loud you might as well have painted your entire horse pink. The upturned handlebar, for example, was supposed to resemble a pair of wings, giving the knight an air of unstoppable momentum. Others favored a long droop that hinted at thoughtful maturity. There were even rumors that the angle of your mustache might tell rivals how often you'd fought. A rumor repeated so many times it gained the shine of truth. As you rest your horse and watch the horizon deepen to purple, you remember the stories told by firesides across Poland. A knight arriving at a tournament with a crooked, ragged mustache was said to bring bad luck to his entire team. That might sound silly, but medieval people trusted omens as much as skill. So your mustache became, in a strange way, your public prophecy. It helped in other areas too, especially the matter of women's respect. When you rode into a lady's courtyard with your armor shining and your mustache perfectly trained, you practically radiated the image of an ideal protector. Some noble women even kept a soft spot for the smell of mustache wax, beeswax with a hint of rosemary, because it meant their champion was home from war, alive and still proud enough to care about a tiny strip of hair. Of course, this was not always an easy standard to uphold. The local climate, with rain, sleet, and wind that seemed determined to destroy any respectable curl, put knights to the test. Squires carried emergency supplies of wax and combs, sometimes fixing their masters' mustaches behind a hedge before they trotted into a tournament ring. You might grin to imagine a great armored knight fussing over a smudge of wax like a schoolboy fixing his hair for a dance, but that was the honest truth of it. That evening, you stable your horse and push open the heavy oak doors of a roadside manor. Inside, more knights gather around the fire, each one sporting a different upper lip flourish. A few greet you with measured nods, appraising your style. They see confidence, the mark of a man who knows what he's about. You settle down with a bowl of cabbage stew, and the warm broth feels good against the late autumn chill. Another knight, whose mustache droops like a sad dog's ear, teases you about yours. Gentle humor, nothing too harsh, just the standard camaraderie of warriors. After dinner, stories swirl around the hearth. Tales of bravery, of close calls, of jousts narrowly won, and of course, the occasional mustache disaster. One knight, red-faced, admits he once had to cut off part of his wax tip because it froze solid in winter and snapped like a twig. You try to keep a straight face but let out a chuckle, because here, a knight's mustache is his badge of class, courage, and a dose of ridiculousness that somehow makes these harsh times a little more human. So as you prepare to sleep, with your mustache safely smoothed down, you remember that tomorrow brings new adventures and new opportunities to prove that you belong among these men of steel and wax bristles. The world of medieval Polish knights might be full of danger, but the greatest danger of all may be letting your mustache go untended. The morning sun rolls over the manor's walls, golden light catching on your polished breastplate, and of course, on the gleaming curves of your proud mustache. You swing into the saddle once again, taking a moment to check that every hair is precisely aligned. After all, you are about to ride to a military encampment where the Polish knights gather before their next campaign, and the last thing you need is a ragged whisker that might provoke snickers or, worse, suggest you are careless in your discipline. Before you depart, your squire fusses over the ends of your mustache, pinching them gently between thumb and forefinger to apply a fresh layer of wax. The scent is a mix of beeswax, a bit of spruce sap, and a dash of mint, the medieval equivalent of a personal brand. It leaves you tingling under the nose, but ready to face the day. You head off at a steady trot, the countryside rolling past in a blur of plowed fields and small chapels. Each time you pass a farmer, he looks up and nods, recognizing you by the distinct swoop of your mustache. In this world, your facial hair acts as a calling card, your signature etched right on your face. Arriving at the camp, you see a line of knights already deep in ritual preparation. They oil their swords, check their lances, and naturally groom their mustaches. Before any real fighting begins, there is a quiet moment to compose themselves. You slip into that rhythm, letting your squire comb out the travel dust from your upper lip, a gentle tug that feels more intimate than any prayer. There is something almost sacred in these small gestures. The squire dips a cloth in a basin of water and wipes away bits of bread from last night's supper, then hands you a mirror to make sure you approve of the final arrangement. You probably wouldn't survive this standard of fussiness if you tried to ignore it, because the eyes of your fellow knights burn with a silent judgment. Here, a properly waxed mustache means you take your calling seriously. A trumpeter sounds, a short fanfare signaling a morning inspection. The commander strides down the line, eyeing each knight's gear, but also, without question, each knight's mustache. There is a flash of pride in your chest as he pauses to study yours, gives a faint nod, and moves on. This is the sign that you belong, that your courage and your class are in proper order. Historians still argue whether commanders really cared about facial hair more than sword skills, but to you, they seem equally important. After inspection, the knights gather around a barrel of water to talk tactics, but soon the conversation drifts, inevitably, to mustache gossip. One older knight boasts that he uses bear grease to achieve a thicker, shinier look. Another claims goose fat is better, though he admits it smells a bit off after a day in the sun. The younger squires take mental notes, storing away these recipes as carefully as sword drills. The talk turns to battlefield rituals. Some men braid tiny charms or colored threads into their mustaches before battle, hoping it will bring luck or frighten enemies. Others smear a dab of resin to stiffen the bristles, giving the illusion of a fiercer scowl. One knight even jokes that his mustache is sharper than his sword. These bits of bravado swirl through the group, and you can't help but chuckle along with them. In the far corner of camp, another knight demonstrates his warm-up routine. Stretches, weapon drills, and a last-minute mustache comb-through, as if he expects the enemy to attack his dignity first. You watch amused, but then remember how such routines, however silly, keep a warrior calm. When facing down an armored line of Teutonic knights, you need every ounce of courage, and if that courage lives in a well-waxed mustache, so be it. Soon, the cooks bring out steaming pots of barley porridge, a hearty breakfast to keep up strength. You stand in line with the others, carefully angling your mustache so that no stray oat lands in its delicate curls. It's harder than you'd think, balancing knightly dignity with a spoonful of hot mush. Someone teases you, asking if your mustache might qualify as a second mouth. You grin and fire back that at least your second mouth doesn't talk nonsense. Overhead, crows wheel in the dawn air, cawing like they too have opinions on the best wax. The soldiers gather up their gear, ready for drills, and the encampment hums with activity. You tighten your gauntlets, pat your mustache for luck, and step into line, heart beating steadily under layers of iron and confidence. And as the banners of your kingdom rise against the pale blue sky, you think again of your mustache. A silly decoration? Maybe. But it is also a signal to everyone who sees you that you belong to this hard, chivalrous brotherhood. That you stand with them, ready to fight, ready to joke, and always, always ready to look your best, even when The mud is flying and swords are singing dot, so as the morning moves on, remember to keep that wax handy, because there is no glory in a drooping mustache. Not here, not now, and not ever on the proud fields of medieval Poland. By late morning, the camp is bustling, and the steady clang of smiths hammering out dents in armor mixes with the laughter of squires chasing after loose horses. You find a moment of calm by the edge of the encampment, where a merchant has set up a small stall filled with all manner of knightly grooming tools, combs of polished bone, tiny pots of beeswax, fragrant herbs, even little brushes made from boar bristles. These are the treasures of the mustachioed knight, and you cannot resist browsing, fingers trailing over the smooth wood of a comb decorated with a carved griffin. Polish knights, after all, were known for taking their grooming almost as seriously as their fighting. Wax was only part of the recipe. There were oils made from pressed poppy seeds, sometimes mixed with rosemary or sage to keep the hair soft and lightly scented. A knight might even ask his squire to boil lavender petals in a copper pot, letting the steam soak into the mustache before battle. It sounds faintly ridiculous, sure, but you probably wouldn't survive medieval stables if you let your mustache reek of old meat and sweat. A fresh herbal rinse was a courtesy to yourself and to those standing near you. The merchant proudly explains each pot of ointment, claiming one can keep lice away and another gives the perfect shine under a torch's glow. You chuckle, wondering if any of these sales pitches are true. But still, you buy a small wax disc scented faintly with mint. Better to be prepared. Historians still argue whether knights really spent so much money on these grooming products, or if merchants simply exaggerated to squeeze coins from noble purses, but the finds in medieval estates, combs, wax pots, even trimming scissors, suggest they truly cared. You pack the wax away and rejoin the main square of the camp, where knights gather to tell tales over steaming mugs of beer. Some share stories of epic tournaments and how their mustaches nearly cost them victory. One man, Sir Piatra, laughs about how a stray gust of wind blew one handlebar tip straight into his eyes mid-joust, leaving him seeing stars. Another swears he lost a duel because his opponent mocked his mustache style so fiercely that he couldn't focus on his sword work. You have to grin. Knights might fight for life and death, but they still worried about being teased like schoolboys over their facial hair, and then there were the herbal concoctions. Bear grease, said to keep a mustache thick, was so prized that it was traded by hunters for silver coins. If you wanted the truly luxurious finish, you might seek out walnut oil or the rare fat from a wild boar, believed to give extra shine and even a mild protective spell against sword cuts. Of course, no one had ever proved that a mustache could block a sword, but the stories kept people hopeful. The more practical knights, though, carried travel wax. Shaped like a small tablet, it could be tucked into a belt pouch and warmed up between your palms. Squires learned to soften it in their hands on chilly mornings, applying it evenly so the bristles stayed neat through a day's ride. You might chuckle to imagine a row of teenage squires, their grimy hands carefully working wax into a knight's whiskers, but that was daily life. Gentle sarcasm aside, it really was a mark of respect to have your squire handle your precious mustache with skill. You look around at your brother knights, each with their unique style. Some favor a pointed shape, evoking hawk feathers, while others go for a wide, sweeping curve like the wings of an eagle. And you? You've chosen a classic handlebar. Not too wild, but dramatic enough to catch attention. It feels like a statement. I am brave, I am chivalrous, I am slightly obsessed with my mustache. Later, you wander over to the camp's practice field. Squires set up straw dummies for spear drills while a group of knights argue over the best way to keep dust out of their upper lip curls. One man suggests smearing a tiny amount of honey to trap the dust, then wiping it away before the final parade. Another rolls his eyes and calls him a walking bakery. The argument fades as they break into laughter, poking fun at each other, in a language of jokes and gentle ribbing that only men who have faced death together can share. Watching them, you remember something you once overheard in a castle hall. A knight's courage is measured by his scars, but a knight's pride is measured by his mustache. Maybe there is truth in that. The mustache, fussed over as if it were a crown jewel, showed the world a knight's discipline and his slightly silly, very human hope that he could stand out in a world of violence and mud. The sun climbs higher, and you wipe a bit of sweat from your brow. Your mustache, newly waxed, holds steady against the heat, the minty scent calming in its own way. And as you ready yourself to drill your horse once more, you think about how much these tiny rituals matter. They transform a simple man on a horse into something greater, a living emblem of courage, chivalry, and a bit of medieval flair that refuses to be forgotten. The clatter of hooves on the training field echoes across the camp, and you steer your mount into a gentle circle, your mind half on the drill, half on the way your mustache tickles in the breeze. Out here, the rhythm of lance practice is familiar. Lower the tip, tighten the legs, brace for the moment of impact. But you're also acutely aware of how every bounce threatens to shift those perfectly waxed bristles you worked on so carefully this morning. There is no escaping it. Before any charge, you must perform a little ritual, straightening the mustache with a quick swipe of your gloved finger. The moment might look silly to an outsider, but to you, it is almost a prayer, because medieval Polish knights saw their mustaches as armor for the soul. If your mustache stayed firm through a battle charge, you could believe your courage would hold firm and so every knight here develops a ritual. Some whisper a line of scripture, others pat their horses twice on the neck, but most, and this you share with them, check their mustache before the trumpet sounds. Historians still argue whether knights really worried this much about appearance in the middle of a fight, but the stories say they did. And the stories always hold some grain of truth. Your squire stands ready, watching anxiously as you bring the lance up for another pass. He holds a damp cloth and a tiny comb, just in case the dirt kicks up and clings to your lip. Imagine that, among all the brutal clang of steel, a teenage squire whose single mission is to preserve the style of your upper lip hair. Gentle. Sarcasm aside, it's strangely comforting. You spur forward. The rush of wind slaps your face, a hint of sweet hay mixing with the iron tang of your armor. Your mustache quivers, but stays obedient, trained into perfect shape by the layers of wax you took care to apply at dawn. You strike the straw dummy square in the chest, the thud sending a vibration through your arm. Cheers go up from the sidelines, and you allow yourself a moment of pride. Not just for the accuracy of the lance, but for the fact that your mustache didn't droop even a hair. Back in the ranks, other knights swap little secrets. One swears by a dab of rosemary oil to keep insects away. Another suggests lemon balm to discourage lice. You listen politely, but you know that nothing replaces a good stiff wax. There's even a rumor going around that a knight once defeated an opponent in a duel by flicking his mustache ends right into the rival's eyes, though that, you suspect, is a tavern tale grown taller over many mugs of beer. After the drills, the knights gather for a meal, a rough stew of barley and onion ladled out in steaming wooden bowls. You join them, carefully turning your head so the soup doesn't stain the tips of your mustache. A few knights grin at the maneuver, mimicking you, because everyone here has developed their own strategy to keep the meal from ending up as decoration. You probably wouldn't survive this camp if you didn't play along with their jokes, because a knight who takes himself too seriously will soon be teased into humility. Nearby, a couple of squires pass around a small pouch of herbs, arguing about whether ground sage or crushed thyme smells better mixed with wax. You overhear their chatter and can't help but admire the dedication. They know how critical these details are for the knights who trust them. One slip of a comb, one badly mixed balm, and a knight's entire day could be thrown off. The day rolls on, drills blending into sparring, and sparring giving way to a quieter afternoon lull. You find a spot near a shallow stream and kneel down, splashing cool water on your face. The sensation is bracing, waking you up from a warm haze. As you straighten, you catch your reflection in the rippling water. Sun-reddened cheeks, a line of sweat on your brow, and that magnificent mustache, still standing proud. Maybe that is the true reward of this ritual. It reminds you that, no matter how muddy the camp gets or how fierce the next fight may be, you carry a part of your dignity on your face. It's a living banner, a way to say, I am still myself. I am still a knight. And no matter how many arrows fly or insults land, the polish of your spirit survives. As surely as the shine of your wax bristles. Evening begins its slow arrival, painting long golden bars across the grass. The knights drift back to there, tense, yawning, stretching, content with a day well spent. You follow, your horse snorting as you pat his warm neck, and your squire hurrying to take his reins. One last glance in a copper mirror reassures you. Your mustache is still, miraculously, in perfect order. And so you turn toward the fires, the laughter, and the distant songs of travelers arriving through the gates. There will be more battles, more drills, more laughter, and through it all, your mustache will remain your silent companion, a reminder of chivalry's odd but comforting rituals. As darkness finally settles across the camp, you find yourself drawn toward the lively heart of the nightly circle, the fireside. Here, under a sky prickled with starlight, the knights sit on wooden benches or overturned barrels, swapping stories. As the flames dance and pop, and naturally, after only a few minutes, the conversation drifts, again, to Mustaches. One knight jokes about a time he lost a bet and had to trim his mustache so short it looked like a fuzzy caterpillar. The laughter is deep and generous, rolling like thunder across the embers. Another boasts of using bear grease imported all the way from the Carpathian Mountains, claiming it gives his bristles a sheen worthy of a royal peacock. You grin at the Vivenla image, picturing a proud, strutting bird where a fierce knight should be. You probably wouldn't survive this place if you didn't find humor in the rituals, because even brave warriors need to laugh at themselves. A bard nearby picks up the tune and spins it into a gentle song about knightly mustaches, how they rise proudly in battle, droop when love is lost, and stand again when courage returns. The melody is slow and lilting, perfect for a night meant to ease into dreams. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the music wash over you. The mustache, it seems, has become more than a style. It is a poetic symbol, woven into song as much as steel. Historians still argue whether the bard's tales were rooted in any real events or simply embroidered to amuse bored knights after a long march. Either way, they live on, passed from one fireside to the next, comforting like warm wine in the chill of evening. Nearby, a younger knight frets over his mustache, worried the heat of the fire might melt the wax and ruin his shape. His squire reassures him, gently smoothing out a kink, and the other men tease him good-naturedly. It is a sweet moment, revealing the thin edge between pride and vulnerability, even among hardened warriors. You lean back, staring at the stars, feeling the heavy cloak of night settle on your shoulders. The air is perfumed with wood smoke, and somewhere under it, the faint minty tang of your own mustache wax. Oddly enough, it soothes you, grounding you in this place where even the smallest detail, a curve of hair, a comb, a dot of wax, becomes part of your identity. Beyond the fires, You hear the sounds of horses shifting in their picket lines, the creak of leather, the quiet snort of tired animals. A night breeze lifts across the camp, fluttering the banners, and tugs playfully at the very tips of your mustache. You pinch them back into place without thinking, a reflex you've repeated 1,000 times. It feels almost like adjusting a crown. A few men share stories of love and courtship, and again, the mustache is at the center. A fine, glossy mustache could catch the eye of a noble lady faster than the gleam of your sword, they say. One knight insists his lady once kissed only the ends of his mustache for good luck before a duel. Another rolls his eyes and says his wife threatened to shave his clean off if he ever lost their savings at dice. Love, it seems, respects no facial hair dot as the night deepens. One knight pulls out a small wooden case containing a tiny iron comb and a vial of fragrant oil. He offers it around, and each man takes a turn carefully grooming his mustache as if blessing it before sleep. You join them, feeling a certain solemn peace as you smooth down the bristles, letting the oil's hint of time settle into your senses. You probably wouldn't survive the snoring in this camp, but at least you'll rest knowing your mustache is in excellent order dot. And then, as the laughter fades and the men begin to drift off one by one, you curl your cloak tighter around your shoulders and settle onto your bedding. The gentle scrape of chainmail, the crackle of firewood, and the faint rise and fall of soft snores form a lullaby unlike any other. Your eyes grow heavy, but even now, you sense the slight pull of the wax tips against your upper lip, a final reminder of the day's pride and silliness. Somehow, that tiny tug helps you let go of your worries. If your mustache is steady, you reason. Perhaps you can be steady too. Sleep comes on quiet feet, wrapping you in its soft cloak. And under the watch of the stars, your mustache stands sentinel, guarding your dreams like the smallest, proudest knight of them all. Dawn tiptoes into the camp, chasing away the night's chill with pale light that sets the canvas tents glowing. You shift on your bedding, blinking awake to the familiar sounds of camp life, the horses stamping, the hiss of water being poured into kettles, and the hushed murmur of knights checking their gear. And of course, there is the unmistakable ritual beginning again, the daily tending of mustaches. Your squire appears at your side with a small basin and a damp cloth, ready to help you refresh. You sit up yawning and let him dab away the traces of sleep from your cheeks. Then he hands you the mirror and you peer closely. The mustache has survived the night, if a bit crumpled. A quick comb, a fresh swirl of wax, and you are restored to proper nightly glory. There is something faintly ridiculous in how seriously this morning routine is taken, yet also something soothing. The wax, the careful combing, the ceremonial strokes, these small acts remind you that you are still yourself, still grounded in the tradition of Polish knighthood. Historians still argue whether knights cared about these details to impress women, or to impress each other, but really, does it matter? Pride is pride, whether you ride into a duel or a dance. After you're ready, you step outside to greet the dawn, armor creaking. A line of knights files past, each one fussing with his facial masterpiece. The camp looks like a moving carnival of bristles, wax, and pride. And it feels somehow comforting to know you are not alone in your odd obsession. Today is a special day, though. A mustache tournament will be held on the green, a playful tradition woven into the harshness of military life. You probably wouldn't survive the embarrassment of missing this event, because here, every knight is expected to present his mustache for judgment. At the far end of the camp, a makeshift wooden platform has been erected. Banners hang, fluttering in the breeze, announcing the great contest of whiskers. Peasants gather on the edges, hoping for a glimpse of their local heroes, while squires scurry to polish armor and re-wax their master's prized fuzz. You feel a flicker of nerves, Odd, considering you face swords and arrows without fear, but this is a different kind of trial. One by one, the knights step onto the platform. A panel of judges, senior knights, a noble lady with a quick eye, and even a traveling merchant who sells wax, survey each mustache with solemn gravity. They measure length, symmetry, and even style points for flair. The crowd roars with laughter when a knight reveals a design shaped like a falcon's wings, waxed to perfection. Another competitor goes for a coiling spiral at each end, prompting delighted applause. Your turn arrives. You step forward, chin high, letting the morning light catch every carefully sculpted line. The judges lean closer, inspecting. One even gives an approving nod and murmurs something about perfect wax consistency. You nearly sigh with relief that it may sound silly, but this moment is as real as any joust or battle, a public chance to stand tall and declare, "I belong here." Mustache tournaments were woven into many medieval fairs, and Polish knights loved them as a way to show status, humor, and a sense of community. Historians still debate whether these contests were formally judged or more like informal bragging matches, but the outcome was the same. It brought knights together and made them laugh. After the show, prizes are awarded. Someone takes home a tiny silver comb engraved with a lion's head, a token of their victory. Another receives a small bottle of imported rosemary oil. You smile at the winner, knowing you will have to try even harder next year to keep your title. As the crowd disperses, you walk down from the stage, your mustache still stiff and glossy, a badge of your effort. A group of children rush over, wide-eyed, asking questions about your wax and how you shape the ends. You bend down, showing them how a squire helps twist the tips, and their giggles fill you with a sense of gentle pride. Somewhere behind you, a drummer starts beating out a lively march, calling everyone to the afternoon's training. You stand, give your mustache one last quick twist, and march away with a grin. Because yes, you might carry a sword, but you also carry the trust and admiration of those around you. And, whether you believe it or not, some of that power is tied to the silly, glorious banner growing on your lip. And so, as the day rolls on, you carry the lesson of the tournament close to your heart, that even in the bloodiest business of medieval warfare, there is always room for a bit of joyful pageantry. And nothing says pageantry quite like a mustache judged worthy of a silver comb. The afternoon sun settles high and warm over the camp, casting sharp shadows from tents and banner poles across the packed dirt. You find a small patch of shade near the stables and sink down, letting the strain of the tournament morning ease out of your shoulders. Around you, knights gather again, still chuckling and teasing each other about whose mustache deserved first place. There is a sense of camaraderie so thick you could nearly taste it, woven together by laughter and just a hint of minty beeswax in the air. Someone hands around a wineskin, and you take a careful sip, mindful not to stain the delicate tips of your handlebar. The cool tartness soothes your throat, and you pause, enjoying the easy moment. You probably wouldn't survive in this culture if you didn't appreciate these moments of community. After all, in medieval Poland, you are never alone in your pride. Off to one side, a group of squires practice braiding colored threads into their masters' mustaches, a new trend they saw at last month's tournament. Some say red threads brought courage, green threads offered good harvests, and gold threads might draw the favor of a wealthy noble patron. Historians still argue if these threads had any real magical roots or were simply the medieval version of a fashion statement, but you can see the boys take the ritual quite seriously. Then a horn sounds in the distance. Knights begin to gather their armor and tighten saddle straps, readying for a round of cavalry drills. You rise, brush the dirt from your knees, and give your mustache a quick inspection. Its wax holds firm, a gleaming sign that you are prepared. For anything. You swing into the saddle, the leather creaking under your weight, and join the slow formation heading toward the practice field. The instructor, a lean, hawk-faced knight with a mustache so pointed it might slice cheese, barks. Orders. You and your comrades spur your horses forward, weaving in and out of tight columns, lances tucked neatly against your sides. The wind rushes over your face as you build speed. Your mustache ripples for a moment, then settles right back into place. The wax doing its quiet duty. There's something absurdly satisfying about that, as if your entire day would fall apart if even a single whisker went rogue. After several passes, the instructor calls a halt, riding down the lines to give notes. He pauses in front of you, eyeing your lance posture, and yes, your mustache, then gives a curt nod of approval. That single gesture, simple as it is, fills you with a confidence that no fancy sword ever could. It is your upper lips. Silent victory. One of your friends breaks rank to ask if you'll join him tonight in the mess tent. A new shipment of dried plums has arrived, and someone's promising a sweet stew to celebrate the tournament. You grin, imagining the sticky mess and how every night will be fighting to keep prunes from lodging in his bristles. You accept. Of course. A feast, no matter how humble, is a rare chance to relax before battle calls again. As you break for water, you notice the peasants near the practice field, farmhands and shepherd boys with sunburnt cheeks, gazing at the knights with something like awe. Some of them sport scruffy mustaches of their own, no doubt inspired by the bold, sculpted masterpieces they see in you. You remember when you were that wide-eyed, before the steel and sweat, before the duties. Back then, the swirl of a waxed mustache seemed like pure magic, a doorway to bravery. Gentle sarcasm aside, there is still something magical about it, even now. It is your badge, your passport into a world of respect and brotherhood. The peasants may never carry a lance, but perhaps they can dream of a handlebar mustache that curls as fearlessly as any knight's sword. As the sun begins to dip lower, signaling evening's slow return, you dismount and pat your horse. The leather reins are warm and worn from hours of practice, familiar under your hands. Your squire rushes over, already reaching for your wax and comb. The boy tends your mustache like a priest tends relics, handling each bristle with almost religious care. You allow him to do it, breathing in the soothing scent of mint and spruce, letting the familiar ritual calm your heartbeat. Around you, fires begin to spring up, dots of orange against the growing dusk. Someone strikes up a fiddle, another knight taps a rhythm on his shield, and laughter soon mixes with the simple melody. You find a seat among them, bowl of plum stew balanced in one hand, trying to eat without decorating your mustache with sticky syrup. You probably wouldn't survive. These feasts without a sense of humor, because between mouthfuls, everyone is quick to joke about whose mustache suffered the worst prune attack. Yours holds steady, a small miracle, and earns a respectful toast from a knight across the fire. The night grows softer, the music slower, and you lean back against a hay bale, savoring a final sip of spiced wine. The polish of your mustache catches the firelight, gleaming with a quiet pride. And you think, as the stars blink awake overhead, how something so small could tie together so much. Courage, tradition, laughter, and the brotherhood of knights. Morning breaks over a gentle mist that clings to the camp like a thin, damp blanket, muffling the usual clamor. You wake to the quiet clip-clop of a cart outside your tent, bringing in fresh hay and supplies, and you stretch, feeling the weight of another day waiting. Before anything else, though, there is one ritual that can never be skipped: a mustache check. You run your fingers along the familiar curve, testing for stray hairs and flattened ends. Satisfied, mostly, you motion to your squire, who dutifully arrives with the pot of beeswax already softened over a candle. The smell is rich, earthy, with a faint note of mint that seems to sharpen your focus. He dabs just enough to resculpt the swoop, pinching the tips into a flourish that practically declares to the world, "I am ready." Beyond the tent flap, you hear knights gathering for today's mission, an audience with the local bishop who has called for their protection on a border dispute. The bishop's court is strict, pious, and rumor says frowns on excessive knightly vanity. You probably wouldn't survive the raised brows of a bishop's retinue if you showed up with a flamboyant curl, so you make a small adjustment, a subtler style still noble, but not so showy it might invite sermons about sin. Riding out of camp, you pass through fields newly green with spring. The farmers pause, straightening up from their rows, tipping caps or crossing themselves as you pass. Even here, your mustache is noted, and you catch children nudging each other, wide-eyed at the nightly flourish over your lip. These tiny recognitions settle in your chest like warm coals, reminding you that your role is bigger than the battlefield. You carry their dreams, their pride, on your bristled banner. The bishop's manor rises ahead, a squat, gray stone place with a cluster of stained glass windows that catch morning light in deep reds and greens. You and your companions dismount, brushing road dust off your cloaks, each man giving his mustache a final subtle pinch. Inside the courtyard, guards in sober tunics stand to attention. You step through the arched gate, feeling the eyes of the bishop's people upon you, measuring you from helm to spur, and of course, from left to right across your upper lip dot the bishop himself appears, robed in heavy brocade, face lean and pinched. He regards you with that particular look clergy sometimes save for knights, halfway between wary respect and cautious disapproval. Still, your mustache, carefully restrained today, earns a nod of polite tolerance. Maybe he sees the discipline in it, the care, the message of honor it quietly carries. As you listen to the bishop's request, guard a small border town against thieves. You stand at parade rest, letting the soft spring breeze stir just the very tips of your mustache. You try not to smile. There is something delightfully absurd about worrying over hair wax while discussing raids and troop placements. But that is the way of a knight's life. Historians still argue whether bishops truly dislike these flamboyant whiskers or whether they secretly admire the discipline required to maintain them. The written records are fuzzy, but the popular stories have survived. Sermons about vanity clashing with knights who refused to give up their prized facial decorations. You suspect there was truth on both sides. When the audience ends, you and your brother knights remount, breathing easier once you leave the bishop's stern gaze behind. As you ride back toward the camp, the mood lightens, a few men laughing softly. One jokes that if the bishop ever caught them with mustaches too grand, he'd order them shorn on the spot. Another replies that no bishop shears are strong, enough to break the will of a Polish knight's wax. You chuckle, joining in. Back in camp, you relax by the fire pit, the morning's tension drifting away like chimney smoke. A group of children is there, helping the cooks peel onions for the midday stew, and they look up with giggles when they see you approach. One brave boy even tries to mimic your mustache with a bent piece of straw, drawing squeals of laughter from the others. You lean down and help him twist the straw's end properly, showing him the classic handlebar curve. In that moment, simple and silly, you feel a tug of happiness. These children will remember you not just as a knight, but as a knight with a mustache so fine it belonged in a song. Gentle sarcasm aside, that is a legacy worth carrying. As noon bells begin to toll, you gather your gear, ready to patrol the roads again. A knight's life is rarely quiet, but thanks to your carefully waxed mustache, you carry a part of your identity that makes even the harshest days a little lighter. One final glance in a polished shield reassures you the style is perfect. And So you ride out once more, the breeze soft on your face, your mustache a banner of courage and tradition against the endless horizon. The afternoon sun is high as you ride out on patrol, warm enough that the road seems to shimmer like a ribbon of bright steel. Your horse's hooves clop steadily over ruts and stones, and you feel each bounce in your spine. But more importantly, you feel each tug of the wind on your mustache. A subtle check tells you the wax is holding, but only just. You probably wouldn't survive the stares of your fellow knights if you let it collapse mid-patrol, so you make a mental note to touch it up once you reach the next village dot as you roll. Through the countryside, peasants step aside to let your troop pass, nodding politely, some staring with open awe. Their gazes linger on the familiar sweep of your bristles, just as they linger on your steel breastplate or the horse's fine tack. Here, your mustache is a part of your uniform, an unspoken oath to live by the codes of chivalry. The roads today are calm, but you remember the bishop's warning about thieves prowling near the forest. You and the other knights spread out, a bit scanning hedgerows and the tree line. The quiet is broken only by birds and the creak of saddle leather, and you catch whiffs of spring blossoms drifting on the breeze. Somewhere in there, a faint mint and beeswax note rides along with you, almost like a personal standard fluttering in the wind. Suddenly, movement catches your eye. A small group of scruffy men hiding near a fence. They look up, startled by your arrival, and freeze. You trot closer, noting their rusty knives and patched cloaks. Clearly no match for your armored company. Still, you call out in a calm, steady voice, hoping to scare them off before violence starts. They hesitate, perhaps considering a fight, but then your companions roll forward in a wave of iron and bristling mustaches, and that sight alone seems to break the bandits' nerve. They drop their knives and run for the woods, leaving behind a dusty trail of footprints. One of your fellow knights laughs, twisting the ends of his mustache proudly. "See?" he says. "They fear the whiskers more than the swords." You grin, letting the moment lighten your mood. Historians still argue whether Polish knights genuinely use their mustaches as a weapon of intimidation, or if these stories are just folklore woven over the centuries. Either way, the bandits' quick retreat today feels like proof enough. After the threat passes, you stop in the shade of a roadside oak, taking a moment to catch your breath. Your squire comes trotting up, eager to help you freshen up. He gently combs a few wild hairs back into place, then offers the wax pot once again. It is a silly routine, but it steadies your nerves more than any battle prayer. With the patrol complete, you lead the knights toward the next village, a cluster of timber cottages and a low stone church surrounded by bright spring fields. Children run alongside your horses, pointing and giggling at the knights' extravagant mustaches. One girl even holds up a wildflower, trying to copy your waxed points. You give her a gentle wave, feeling oddly proud of your influence. In the village square, the local reeve hurries over with bread and cheese to offer thanks for keeping the road safe. You dismount, brushing the road dust from your cloak, and greet him warmly. He cannot help but comment on your mustache. Even in the midst of serious talk about thieves, there's room for admiration of knightly style. You eat a quick meal, careful to shield your bristles from stray crumbs. There is an art to keeping food out of a fine mustache, and you've perfected it over many long marchers. One young boy watches you, utterly fascinated by how you tilt the bread and chew so precisely. You catch his eye, wink, and tell him, "Ah?" Knight eats with his sword in one hand and his mustache in mind. That earns a delighted giggle. After the meal, you wash your hands and let your squire check your face once more. The mirror shows a few stray hairs, quickly corrected, and then you are ready to ride again. Beyond the village, a winding road leads up to a small watchtower on a hill, the next checkpoint on your rounds. As you ride on, the air shifts cooler, clouds gathering in the west. You pull your cloak closer, thankful for the warmth, and take another moment to adjust your wax tips. If a sudden spring shower comes, and it probably will, your mustache could face its greatest test yet. You probably wouldn't survive. The laughter if you showed up with a drooping, rain-soaked curl. You spur forward as the wind picks up, promising more adventure ahead. Between your knees, the horse answers with a willing surge of speed, carrying you toward the watchtower, toward whatever dangers or silly stories might lie ahead. And always, at the front of your mind, is that quiet vow: protect your land, protect your people, and protect your magnificent mustache at all costs. The road to the watchtower winds through low rolling fields dotted with dandelions, and you keep a steady pace, your horse breathing easy beneath you. The breeze carries the earthy scent of turned soil, a comforting reminder of the peasants working these lands and of all the simple, quiet lives you're sworn to defend. You reach up now and then to check your mustache, making sure each wax tip still holds despite the jostle of the ride. You probably wouldn't survive the ribbing back at camp if you let it droop at the crest of the hill. The watchtower looms ahead, built of gray stone with a timber roof and a small bell that could summon help in a hurry. The guards stationed here wave as you approach, their faces breaking into easy grins the moment they see the familiar swirl of your handlebar mustache. It is as much a badge of authority as your knight's crest, a kind of passport, instantly proving who you are. You dismount and exchange a few polite words with the captain of the guard, who gestures you toward the wall walk. From here, you can see far over the spring fields, all the way back to the edge of the dark forest where the bishop feared thieves might regroup. The sun peeks through a veil of cloud, lighting patches of the land like pools of gold, and you feel a quiet moment of pride. This is your home, and you keep it safe. Leaning against the cold stone, you catch sight of another knight arriving on the trail. Even from a distance, you recognize him by the enormous, flaring mustache bristling over his upper lip, waxed into long, swooping arcs. You grin. Sir Conrad, a friend and sometime rival, always took mustache styling to dramatic heights. Today, he's practically wearing a pair of squirrel tails on his face, and you have to stifle a laugh. Conrad joins you on the wall, adjusting his helm and smoothing the squirrel tail curls with a practiced hand. Road clear? He asks. For now. You reply, nodding toward the forest. They ran off as soon as they saw our bristles coming. Conrad chuckles. Good. Better to win by style than by steel. The two of you stand in comfortable silence for a while, watching a herd of cattle being moved along a lane, the farmers whistling and waving up at you both. It's a gentle scene, peaceful and bright, far from the chaos of a tournament or the confusion of a battlefield. But peace needs guardians, and guardians need tradition. Your mustache, as silly as it might seem, is part of that. It is a symbol of knightly discipline, proof you take yourself and your duty seriously enough to care about the smallest details. Historians still argue whether knights invented these codes themselves or borrowed them from older, step-born ancestors like the Sarmatians. But they agree on one thing. No medieval Polish knight was complete without a glorious, carefully tended upper lip. As the afternoon drifts on, you and Conrad share stories of the last feast, comparing notes about the best wax recipes and the worst grooming mishaps. He tells you how, on a bitter winter patrol, his mustache actually froze so hard it snapped in one place, forcing him to trim it down until spring. You wince in sympathy, remembering your own near disaster with hot soup that once melted your wax mid-banquet. Gentle sarcasm aside, a knight's life is a constant battle between pride and disaster. Down below, the watchtower guards keep busy stacking firewood, patching a broken gate, tending a pot of thick cabbage stew. The simple rhythms of daily work seem to echo the steady beat of your own thoughts. You shift your helmet on your arm, enjoying the breeze cooling the sweat along your hairline. You take another subtle check of your mustache, holding steady. Perfect as ever. As evening begins to color the sky a soft pink, you decide it is time to move on, wanting to make camp before true night. Conrad claps you on the shoulder with a grin, promising to compete with you in the next mustache tournament, and you laugh, promising to bring fresh rosemary wax next time to outshine his squirrel tails. Mounting up, you cast one last look over the quiet fields, letting that calm sink deep into your bones. This is why you ride, why you train, why you bear the weight of steel to keep moments like this safe. And yes, part of it is for the pride that comes with knowing you look the part of a true Polish knight, waxed mustache and all. It is a small thread of hope woven through the harsh, muddy cloth of medieval life. A statement that even among war, a man could still shape a bit of beauty for himself. The road calls you forward, hooves striking sparks from old stones as you ride down from the watchtower. The wind catches your mustache again, and you reach up, steadying it, because tomorrow there will be more battles, more bandits, more laughing children, and more reasons than ever to keep that proud swirl alive. The trail back to camp is calm, the evening air carrying the warm, earthy scent of tilled fields mixed with wood smoke from distant hearths. Your horse moves at a steady pace, each hoofbeat a gentle drum that settles you into a kind of meditative rhythm. You reach up now and again to check your mustache, because you know the first thing your fellow knights will do when you arrive is study your face for any sign of droop or damage. You probably wouldn't survive their good-natured teasing if you showed up with a lopsided curl. As the road winds through small farms, villagers pause in their chores to wave. You nod back, grateful that these people, their faces lined by sun and wind, can live in peace, free from worry about raiders or warlords. And in some odd way, they seem to take comfort from seeing you with your well-kept mustache, as if it reassures them that the old ways, the knightly codes, are still enforced. At the edge of one village, a group of children gather, wide-eyed. One bold girl points straight at your mustache and calls, "It's bigger than my papa's." The other children burst into giggles, and you can't help but laugh along. You lean down, telling them with a wink that size comes from bravery, not just wax, and they squeal with delight. Continuing on, you pass a tiny chapel, its wooden cross silhouetted against the deepening blue of dusk. There, a traveling priest stops you and politely asks for an escort to the next settlement. You agree, of course, and he clambers awkwardly onto a borrowed horse, his robes bunching up. He eyes your mustache and gives a faint smile. "Knight," he says gently, "does that grand whisker of yours ever get in the way of your prayers?" You grin. "Father, it reminds me of discipline every day. Even prayers need polish, do they not?" The priest laughs, shaking his head, and you ride on together, side by side along the hedgerow. Historians still argue whether the church truly opposed these elaborate facial flourishes or only grumbled because they hinted at a knight's pride. But moments like this seem to show that even priests could appreciate the craft of a well-tended mustache. As the sky darkens, a chill drifts in, and the priest shivers under his thin robe. You offer him half of your cloak, letting him pull it across his shoulders, and he thanks you with quiet sincerity. It reminds you that all men, whether they wear chainmail or a monk's habit, feel the same wind and the same cold. It is your duty, you realize, to shield them, as surely as you shield your own mustache from ruin. The priest tells you a story to pass the time, about a knight of old who was said to have woven gold thread through his mustache, believing it would turn every word he spoke into a blessing. Gentle sarcasm aside, that knight must have had a thick purse and an even thicker skull, because wax alone is challenge enough. But you smile. letting the silly image lull you into a calm rhythm of hoofbeats and conversation. Soon the campfires of your company appear on the horizon, orange pinpricks against the gathering dark. The sense of relief is immediate, as familiar sounds and smells meet you. The clink of pots, the low murmur of men swapping tailies, and the unmistakable perfume of rosemary, mint, and beeswax drifting from every corner. You escort the priest to the central fire, where he thanks you once more before being welcomed by other knights who offer bread and wine. Your squire appears as if summoned, already reaching for the wax tin. You let him check your mustache, smoothing the tips, restoring its perfect lines after a long ride. These quiet moments, a boy tending your whiskers as carefully as a mother tending her child, speak of a deep trust that goes beyond words. As you settle on a stool by the fire, you listen to stories swirling around you. One knight boasts of a commander whose mustache was so broad he could hide a coin behind it. Another insists his uncle once tied a tiny good luck charm to the wax tip before a duel. These stories may be half truth, half fantasy, but they stitch the nights together, giving them a sense of shared tradition that makes even cold nights feel warm. You take a sip of thin ale, breathing in the mingled scents of straw, smoke, and herbs, and feel a quiet pride settling across your shoulders. The priest, now comfortable and fed, offers a blessing for the nights, and you bow your head, your mustache brushing your lips like a soft banner of belonging. Sleep will come soon, and with it dreams of tomorrow's roads and tomorrow's trials. But for now, you sit in peace, letting the wax stiffen once more in the night air, and thinking how something as small as a mustache could grow to carry the weight of courage, faith, and even a little kindness. Morning rises pale and damp, with a soft mist that clings to your cloak and curls around your horse's legs like ghostly fingers. The camp is already busy, squires scurrying with buckets of water and cooks stirring cauldrons of barley gruel. Over smoky fires, you stretch the sleep from your arms and immediately reach for your mirror. A knight's first worry, after all, is the state of his mustache. The wax is held overnight, but a night on rough bedding has left a stray kink near the left tip. You probably wouldn't survive the tournament's chatter if you let that stand, so you pinch and twist it back into its dignified arc, smoothing the hairs with practiced ease. You can almost hear your brother knights in the mess tent praising or mocking the smallest imperfection. Over breakfast, the talk once more turns to mustaches. It seems inescapable. One knight with a grand gray swirl recounts how a lady of the court declared she could read a knight's character in the shape of his whiskers. Another jokes that in battle, enemies might get lost following the loops, and points, giving him the advantage. Gentle sarcasm aside, you suspect there is a grain of truth buried under the laughter. The mustache was an undeniable part of a knight's battlefield presence. Once fed, you join a group preparing to ride out on a fresh patrol. The roads have been calm, but word is a visiting dignitary will pass through today, and it falls to your company to escort him. As you saddle up, your squire fusses with your mustache one final time, giving a proud nod before stepping away. That small act, repeated each day, feels like a blessing. You trot down the camp lane, banners lifting gently overhead, and soon your troop heads toward the dusty crossroads where the dignitary is expected. Along the way, farmers look up from their plows to watch you pass, some offering blessings, others simply gawking at the shining lances and bristling rows of waxed whiskers. Arriving early, you wait by a shrubby hedgerow, letting the birdsong and breeze fill the silence. In that pause, you reflect on how a Polish knight's mustache is more than personal pride. It is a marker of station. Historians still argue whether there was an official rule dictating mustache length or whether peer pressure alone enforced the style, but one thing was clear: a knight without a respectable mustache was a walking scandal. At last, The dignitary's retinue appears, a small group of wagons, colorful heraldic shields, and a company of liveried guards. You move forward, greeting the nobleman, a rotund fellow with a thoughtful face, and offer him the traditional knightly courtesy. He studies you for a moment, his gaze inevitably settling on your handlebar masterpiece, and gives a polite, approving nod. Apparently, your grooming passes muster even among the highborn. You ride alongside the wagons, keeping pace through a gentle afternoon. The dignitary is in a chatty mood and asks about your mustache with barely concealed curiosity. "Tell me," he says, "does that marvelous shape truly stay in place during a charge?" You smile. "As steady as a banner in the wind, my lord." He chuckles, pleased, and you sense the tension of the moment ease. Small talk about grooming might seem silly, but it often opened doors in medieval diplomacy. A knight who kept himself in order signaled discipline, wealth, and respect for tradition, traits any noble could appreciate. The wagons roll on, past flocks of grazing sheep and tangled banks of spring flowers. You keep half an eye on the hedgerows, watching for trouble, while the dignitary continues to marvel at your company's facial artistry. Another knight near you, sporting a wax swirl worthy of a falcon's wing, politely explains his squire's rosemary oil recipe to the dignitary's absolute fascination. When the group pauses for rest, you dismount and stretch your legs, carefully guarding your mustache from an unexpected breeze. The dignitary's guards offer you wine, and you sip it delicately, mindful that one splash could undo half your morning's work. You probably wouldn't survive your squire's horrified gasp if you let wine drip down your bristles. As the wagons continue, you notice children along the road mimicking you, holding up crook sticks like false mustaches, laughing and waving. It warms you more than any cloak, knowing they see you as a figure of gallantry and style, and ideal to look up to. By late afternoon, you reach the next safe settlement, where the dignitary can rest in a merchant's sturdy timber hall. You bow, receive his thanks, and he once more studies your upper lip with a satisfied grin. It seems even in the heart of a harsh medieval world, a knight's careful styling can spark delight and trust. Your troop wheels about to return to camp, the light fading into a hazy pink over the fields. You check your mustache once more before you ride. Each hair is where it should be, still holding true through dust, wine, and conversation. And so, as your company rides back under the growing stars, you breathe easy, proud that the symbol of your courage and station, ridiculous, wonderful, and dignified, remains flawless after another day's challenges. Night gathers gently around your returning troop, the first stars poking through a sky washed purple and gold by the setting sun. The village fires glow ahead, small lanterns guiding your horses back toward the familiar scent of wood smoke, onions, and steaming barley stew. You shift in the saddle, a tired but satisfied ache settling into your shoulders, and yes, you do it without thinking now. Check the faithful swirl of your mustache. Still perfect, still proudly marking you as a knight of these Polish lands. At the camp gates, a couple of fellow knights hail you, grinning broadly. Their own waxed masterpieces shine in the torchlight, reflecting hours of care and tradition. One claps you on the arm and teases you about the dignitary. Did he ask to buy your wax recipe? You laugh, shaking your head, and promise to share. The full tale over dinner. As you hand your horse to a waiting stable boy, you hear voices drifting from the common tent, knights swapping stories of the day, squires fumbling at the fires, and above all, the gentle, comforting repetition of jokes about mustaches. Some things never change. Inside the tent, the warmth hits you, sweet and smoky and a little sharp with the tang of garlic in the stew pot. You settle on a bench with the others, removing your helm and running your fingers across your upper lip to check for any soup-borne disasters before they happen. You probably wouldn't survive the laughter of these men if you dipped your mustache in the stew unawares. Nearby, a young squire sits wide-eyed, absorbing every conversation. One knight demonstrates how to sharpen a sword and then, with the same solemnity, explains how to trim a wayward bristle without breaking the wax seal. Gentle sarcasm aside, it seems the knights pass on grooming skills as fiercely as they teach sword strokes. You join in, offering a small tip about using a drop of rosemary oil to ward off lice. The young squire looks astonished, as if this secret might change the entire course of his future. You smile, thinking how many generations of warriors have fussed over these tiny details. Historians still argue whether such grooming rituals had real hygienic value or were mostly for show. But the sense of pride they built was as real as the cold steel of your sword. After dinner, the knights gather around the fire, sharing a jug of weak wine. The talk turns to famous commanders of old men whose mustaches were as legendary as their victories. You hear the tale of Hetman Golkievsky, who was said to have waxed his bristles so stiffly that an enemy blade once glanced right off. Them. You chuckle at that tall tale, letting it warm you like a bedtime story. One veteran recounts how he once paraded before the king himself, and the monarch had remarked, "A knight's courage is written on his face, in bristle and in scars." That line sticks with you, weaving through your thoughts like a gentle lullaby. As the night deepens, you leave the tent for a moment, stepping outside to feel the cool air on your cheeks. The village is quiet, the only sounds the sleepy lowing of cattle and the wind stirring through fresh spring grass. You close your eyes, taking a deep breath, letting the peaceful darkness steady your heartbeat. A torch flickers nearby, catching the shine of your mustache just so, and you grin at the pigady. Small comfort it gives. All the polish, the wax, the discipline, it is more than vanity. It is a message to the world that you belong to something older and greater than yourself. You stand for those who cannot stand, you protect those who cannot fight, and you do. So with a flourish that says, "Here I am, a knight, unbroken." Gentle sarcasm aside, a drooping mustache might never break your sword arm, but it could bruise your pride, and pride is no small thing in a world of mud and iron. You step back into the warmth of the tent, trading one last joke with your comrades. Before finding your bedding, the night smells of straw, wax, and a hint of sweet herbs someone has tossed on the coals. You nestle under your cloak, letting the chatter fade, letting the camp quiet itself until only the breathing of sleeping nights remains. And as you drift toward dreams, you feel once again that tiny tug on your upper lip, a comforting weight. That tells you tomorrow you will wake with the same promise: to ride, to fight, and to hold your mustache and your honor steady against any storm. Dawn comes with a hush of pale gold across the canvas of your tent, and the steady muffled noises of camp begin again. The creak of buckets at the well, the sharp whistle of a cook scolding a drowsy squire, the metallic chorus of knights buckling on their armor. You rub the sleep from your eyes and instinctively reach for your mustache, feeling for any traitorous strands bent by the night. There is a faint bend on the right tip, nothing dramatic, but you smooth it out with a practiced thumb. You probably wouldn't survive the day's drills if you showed up with a droop, so best to fix it before even your boots go on. Today is a day for training, a proper tournament's worth of practice ahead. The field is already marked with lances stacked neatly, straw dummies positioned for sword strikes, and barrels ready to catch stray arrows. You stride out, boots sinking slightly in the wet spring grass, and greet your companions with a nod, checking each knight's bristle situation as automatically as they check yours. The silent measure of respect travels from mustache to mustache, like a secret handshake no words can match. Your squire stands ready with a small pot of wax, which he's warmed near the fire. He's grown skilled now, applying it with steady hands and even a flourish that mimics yours. You nod approval, proud to see the boy learning not just to polish steel, but to polish pride itself. Historians still argue whether these squirely grooming duties were official or simply tradition passed from older knights. But there's no denying the young lads consider it a badge of trust. The first practice of the morning is jousting. You mount up, adjusting your helmet so your mustache is free to breathe, and steer your horse into the list field. The other knights do the same, each one testing the wind against their wax, shifting to see how their bristles stand up to the coming charge. You grin. It is half martial ritual, half silly performance, yet deeply serious all the same. The trumpet sounds, and you lower your lance. The weight of it pulls your shoulder for an instant, but your arm finds its rhythm. You spur forward, feeling the drum of hooves surge through your entire frame, the field flashing by in a blur of banners. And straw. The other knight approaches, his mustache as stiff as iron, eyes locked on your dot impact. The lances crash together, shields shudder, and for a split moment you cannot tell if you've won or lost until you see your opponent teetering and then toppling backward off his saddle. Cheers burst from the sidelines. You pull up your horse, heart pounding, and feel a grin split your face. The mustache? Still perfect. Of course, you probably wouldn't survive the endless teasing otherwise. A squire rushes up to wipe dust from your vambrace, while another checks your bristle tips with the same care usually reserved for a prized hunting dog. The absurdity of it strikes you with gentle humor, and you laugh, shaking your head. Still, the pride glows in your chest, warm and steady. When the jousts end, you practice sword drills, moving through cuts and thrusts with a smooth grace built from years of repetition. The sun climbs high, bringing sweat to your brow and a streak of mud on your greaves, but you hardly notice, focused instead on keeping your upper lip banner unbent. A single droop would signal sloppiness, and a sloppy knight risks more than embarrassment. After hours of practice, you rest under the shade of a canvas pavilion. A boy brings you cool water, and you sip carefully, avoiding even a drop on your waxed edges. Another knight flops down beside you, breathing hard, and says, "Tell me true. Do you think all this fuss is worth it?" You smile, looking out at the field dotted with proud bristles and polished helms. "Of course," you reply, "because the day I stop caring for my mustache is the day I stop caring for my oath." He laughs, shaking his head, but you see he agrees as the afternoon wanes. A group of peasants arrives to watch the knights. Their faces light up when they see your troop, and the children whisper and giggle, pointing first at the swords, then, inevitably, at the mustaches. A young boy clutches his mother's hand and asks if he might grow one someday. You lean down with a grin, telling him, "Only if you have a brave heart." It feels good to share that moment, silly and heartfelt, all at once. Because for all its fuss and ceremony, the mustache really does tell a story of courage, loyalty, and a little touch of comedy that makes harsh days bearable. As the sun dips toward evening, you help break down the practice lists, returning lances to their racks, leading your horse to water. You pause to splash your face, careful not to disturb the careful waxwork above your lip. It gleams faintly in the fading light, a small, shining badge of your place in the world. You turn back toward camp, ready for another night of stories, another pot of stew, another round of easy laughter among men who share your odd, wonderful pride. And as you walk, your mustache lifts in the evening breeze like a tiny flag, unbowed, untamed, and perfectly at home. The night settles once more over camp, drawing a hush across the fields except for the low, comforting sounds of horses shifting in their pickets and the faint drone of crickets in the grass. You find yourself back in the mess tent where the sweet smoky air is thick with stew and men's laughter. A jug of weak wine goes around, and as always, Talk drifts to the business of mustaches. Who's grown the best this season? Whose wax held up through the day's jousts? Whose squire made a tragic mess of trimming? One knight claims his mustache saved his life by blocking a stray splinter from a shattered lance. Another says his bristles once froze so hard they cracked and bled. Gentle sarcasm aside, everyone listens as if these bristle battles are as worthy of song as any clash of steel. Nearby, a group of squires huddle together, giggling, telling half-whispered stories about how the ladies at court gossip over knightly mustaches. Some admired their elegance, some found them intimidating. A bold squire blurts out a rumor that a high-born lady had once tried to braid a knight's mustache for luck before a duel. The older knights roar with laughter, trading knowing glances. That suggests even a hint of truth might hide there. You smile into your cup, thinking of all the ways women must have regarded these extravagant whiskers, sometimes as marks of power, sometimes as harmless vanity, sometimes perhaps even as a subtle challenge. Historians still argue whether noble ladies admired or mocked these bristles, but the tailies live on in bright color at every campfire. Stepping out for air, you stand by the tent flap, letting the breeze soothe your sweat-damp skin. The night is dark but gentle, the moon climbing over the low roofs of the village in a soft silver arc. You look across the gathering of tents, everyone harboring men who trust their wax as much as their blade. You probably wouldn't survive this knighthood if you didn't learn to laugh at the contradiction. That warriors so fierce could also fuss like preening roosters over a strip of facial hair dot as you watch the fires burn low. A knight steps up beside you, pulling off his helm with a resigned sigh. His mustache has wilted, one drooping point defeated by a splash of stew earlier. You help him twist it back into place, lending him your squire's wax and a steady hand. There is something brotherly in the way you work, no different than binding a cut or helping buckle armor. You grin at him. Better? We can't have you looking half a knight. He laughs, relief in his eyes, and clasps your shoulder. Moments like this bind you tighter than any oath. Back inside the tent, a new round of stories begins. Someone mentions a bold woman, a merchant's daughter, who snuck into the lists dressed in armor, determined to fight for her brother's honor. They say she had to stick a false mustache to her lip to fool the heralds. It was a ridiculous image, and yet you can almost admire her courage. You probably wouldn't survive the suspicion if a real knight's mustache ever came off in a duel, but for her, that false bristle was a symbol of defiance. And somehow, that makes you smile. The nights go on, debating whether any woman could ever truly understand what a mustache means to a knight. But of course, they could. They saw the pride, the bravery, the effort behind every perfect swirl. Maybe they even loved it for all its flaws, because it showed these fierce men were still human, still in need of a ritual to steady their hearts. The fire burns lower. Someone pokes a fresh log on, sending up sparks that dance like stars for a brief moment. You feel a calm settle across your shoulders. The day's battles, the dusty roads, the nervous dignitaries, even the silly braids of rumors, they all fade into a single quiet thought. Your mustache has survived them all. You brush your thumb across it, gentle, like patting an old friend on the back. A final check shows it is still proud, still waxed, still worthy. That is all you need to sleep well. So you slip toward your bedroll, the sounds of your brothers slowly quieting as dreams take them one by one. The scent of rosemary and beeswax still clings to the air, a sweet note that says you are home, among those who share your strange code of courage and humor. And as your eyes drift shut, you know tomorrow will bring more drills, more laughter, more little victories, and more reason than ever to keep that splendid swirl above your lips shining strong. The morning feels sharp and bright, the kind that slices away sleep with a single breath of crisp air. You rise with a soft groan. joints protesting after days of drills, and flex your shoulders before turning at once to the essential, a mustache check. Still mostly intact, though one stubborn tip leans a little left, probably nudged by your cloak as you slept. You probably wouldn't survive the ribbing of your companions if you left it crooked, so you twist and smooth until it sits proudly. Once more. Today, the talk in camp is buzzing about an upcoming diplomatic visit. Emissaries from the neighboring kingdom are arriving to negotiate a trade route. This means pageantry, polished armor, neat braids in your horse's mane, and, most of all, a flawless mustache to show the world Polish knights no discipline. Your squire stands ready as always, comb in one hand, pot of rosemary and mint wax in the other. He applies it with a steady calm that still surprises you, as if this delicate ritual is no less important than checking your sword's edge. There is a certain reverence in the moment, almost like a prayer. Historians still argue whether this was a matter of vanity or a display of martial confidence, but you know the truth, it is both. Once dressed and prepared, you mount up with your company and ride toward the manor where the emissaries wait. The road feels festive, villagers sweeping paths, hanging woven ribbons from doorways and waving shyly as you pass. You catch a few glances toward your mustache, always the first thing that seems to register, and you ride taller for it. Your lip armor holding steady. At the manor gates, guards open wide the doors, and you dismount with practiced grace, adjusting your cloak, checking once more that your bristles are straight. You probably wouldn't survive a noble snide remark if you let them droop in front of an ambassador. Inside, the air is warm and heavy with the scent of herbs and rushes on the floor. A herald in blue and gold livery bows you through, leading you to a high-raftered hall where the emissaries stand waiting. They look every bit the dignitaries, stiff in layers of brocade and carrying the weight of a dozen kingdoms in their manner. Yet even they cannot help a flicker of curiosity toward the knight's mustaches. One politely comments on their polish, and your commander beams with pride. This moment, you realize, is its own subtle victory, proof that your disciplined style impresses even across borders. The negotiations begin, all cautious words and polite threats wrapped in velvet speech. You stand quietly to one side, watchful, your eyes scanning for trouble, but also keeping that mustache perfectly poised, a silent message of vigilance. One emissary grows animated, waving his hands, nearly splashing wine on your boots. You resist a sigh, thankful no droplets landed on your precious wax tips. During a break in talks, the nobles mingle, and a small group approaches, clearly curious about nightly grooming. One asks about the wax, another wants to know how you shape the ends so evenly, and a third looks skeptical that it can withstand a ride in the rain. You grin and give them a small demonstration, a pinch, a twist, a final pat, letting them see the almost ridiculous dedication up close. They laugh, nodding with newfound respect, and you sense that a barrier has gently fallen away. Historians still debate whether such personal details ever truly help diplomacy, but in this moment, you feel sure it does. The mustache is a soft thing in a hard world, a harmless point of wonder that humanizes the men in iron and makes conversation easier. The day wears on, filled with long words and wary nods. You stand there, a living standard, never fidgeting, never letting your wax give way, as loyal to your oath as to your own traditions. When at last the emissaries step out to their wagons, bowing thanks for safe passage and polite company, you sense their final glances taking in your handlebar with a certain envy. Back in camp that evening, the talk is all about the trade routes and new alliances, but a good half of the chatter still circles back to who kept their bristles best under the nobleman's gaze. One knight teases you for showing off your twisting technique, and you laugh, telling him that the dignitaries seemed more interested in mustaches than swords. The embers of the evening fire glow warm as you set down your helmet and sip a cup of weak ale. You run a last check over your whiskers, finding them still upright, still perfect after a long day of politics. It brings a glow to your chest, the same feeling you might get from a well-landed lance or a kind word from your commander. And so, as darkness draws its blanket over the fields, you settle near the fire, hearing the crickets sing and the horses shuffle in their sleep. You know tomorrow will hold more of the same. Challenges, drills, perhaps another bit of pageantry, but you will face it with a steady sword hand, a steady heart, and the same steady swirl above your lip dot because, in the end, a knight's. Honor does not rest only on blade or banner, but also on the tiny shining badge of pride riding boldly on his face. The sun is barely up when the call for weapons practice echoes through the camp, a trumpet note slicing the quiet dawn. You pull yourself from sleep, still blinking, and automatically reach for your upper lip. The wax has softened a bit overnight, as it always does, but with a gentle twist and a steady pinch you coax the bristles back into formation. You probably wouldn't survive the smirks of your comrades if you stepped onto the training field looking anything less than perfect. Your squire appears with fresh beeswax and a small cloth, eyes bright and eager. He works quickly, smoothing the tips and polishing them with the same pride he shows when buckling your greaves. There is something touching in how seriously he takes this task, as if your mustache were as important as the blade at your hip. Maybe, in a way, it is today your company drills in formation, sword work, shield maneuvers, then the complicated, thundering patterns of cavalry charges. You swing into the saddle, testing the stirrups, and check again that your wax holds. The other knights are doing the same, trading quick jokes about whose bristles might collapse first under the hard ride. The practice is fierce, dirt flying under hooves, sunlight flashing from polished helms. You shout orders, direct a wedge formation, and lean forward as your horse plunges into a tight turn. The wind tugs at your face, but your mustache stands firm, a small but certain victory. Historians still argue whether such things mattered in true battle, but every knight in this field knows the truth. A confident mustache means a confident mind. As you break to water the horses, a younger knight rides up, grinning, and asks you for advice. His mustache, a brave attempt, but sadly lopsided, wilts to one side in the breeze. You smile and show him how to spread the wax, how to curl from the center outward, how to keep the shape symmetrical. He listens as if you're revealing the mysteries of the Holy Grail. Gentle sarcasm aside, it feels good to teach, to pass down this silly yet serious craft, the sign of knightly station that transcends any sword stroke. The younger men deserve to learn how to stand proudly, and the mustache, ridiculous as it sounds, is part of that lesson. By midday, the drills end, sweat glistening on your brow, the air sharp with the scent of trampled grass and hot iron. You rest near the practice yard, sharing a skin of watered-down wine with your fellow knights. A breeze stirs through the camp, fluttering cloaks and making every man instinctively reach for his waxed curls. A chorus of little gestures that speaks volumes about what matters here. Then word comes from the captain of a feast planned that night to celebrate a visiting bard who will sing of great victories and no doubt a few mustachioed mishaps. You grin at the thought, an evening of songs, roasted lamb, perhaps even a tale of your own jousting triumphs woven into a rhyme. But first, there is one priority, a thorough grooming. You slip away to your tent, your squire already preparing hot water for a proper wash. He gently works the dust from your mustache with a damp cloth, and you feel a sense of relief as the day's grit melts away. The wax will be reapplied for the evening, fresh and shining, ready for the glow of torchlight as he works. You think back on all the ways this bit of hair has become part of you, how it has helped break ice with noble ladies, how it has made. Bandits second-guess their courage, how it has even sparked respect from hardened commanders. It is your silent herald, your crest, a reminder of every laugh and every oath sworn in the long roads behind you. Historians still puzzle over why knights clung so fiercely to mustaches while other warriors might choose clean faces. You suspect it has less to do with fashion than with the comfort of ritual. That ritual is a tether in the chaos of war, a small thing you can control in a world of battles you often cannot. When the sun sets, the feast begins. You enter the hall with your comrades, the warm firelight making everyone's wax gleam like polished metal. There is food in plenty, thick bread, honeyed wine, a lamb roasted so tender it nearly falls from the bone. The bard takes up his harp, plucking out a gentle melody that spins through the crowded room. Soon enough, the song turns to knights, and their splendid bristles, drawing cheers and playful jeers. You laugh, raising your cup in salute, and join in the chorus. There is something reassuring about how everyone celebrates this silly, beautiful tradition. The laughter, the friendly boasts, the half-true stories of mustaches that turn the tide of duels. You catch sight of your reflection in a polished shield propped against the wall. The mustache looks perfect, every curve bold and strong. You feel that quiet pride settle in your chest again, steady as an oak, and as the night rolls on, you lean back, letting the bard's gentle chords carry you into a peaceful haze, confident that no matter what tomorrow brings, storm or sword, you will face it with courage on your lips, curled and shining for all to see. The night feast stretches long into the hours when even the most boisterous knights begin to nod, their laughter softening to quiet conversation, their cups less full than before. You sit back with a pleasant ache in your shoulders, warm from roasted lamb and the heat of the fire, and let the bard's final gentle verses wash over you. The tune drifts from memories of grand battles to simpler images. A knight returning home, his mustache still proud, carrying the peace he fought. 4. You trace one finger along your own upper lip, confirming the wax holds steady. Even now, after a day of drills, a night of feasting and countless toasts, your mustache is still a badge of resolve. It feels a bit silly, you admit to yourself with a private grin, but that's exactly what makes it so comforting. Soon the great hall grows quiet. Men slip away to their bedrolls or share last sips of wine around guttering candles. You rise, gathering your cloak, and step outside. The night air is cool and fresh, carrying the faint scent of wild herbs from the nearby fields. You stand a moment, letting it ease the lingering haze of wine from your head. A group of squires is still awake, cleaning up platters and washing down the long wooden tables. One notices you and smiles shyly, clearly still in awe of knights. And yes, probably your handlebar mustache too. You nod back with an easy grace, wanting him to see that a knight's pride comes with gentleness as well as steel. Historians still argue if all these rituals really mattered, whether they were just vanity or a fragile comfort. You know the answer is both. That small ribbon of wax bristle says you belong to something greater, a line of warriors who kept a promise, to protect their people, to stand firm, and to polish dignity even when the world turned to mud. You walk slowly through the camp, the soft dirt muffling your footsteps. A lone torch flickers against the wooden palisade, and beyond it the rolling fields sleep in calm darkness. Tomorrow will bring another day of practice, perhaps more politics, maybe another tournament. You breathe in, steady and easy, letting the thought settle. You will be ready for it as long as you keep your heart steady and your mustache steady. With a dot in your tent, you remove your armor with careful motions, piece by piece, until you stand in only a tunic. You splash water on your face, cooling your skin, and check the wax swirl one last time. Still perfect. A simple anchor in a world of shifting loyalties, harsh weather, and dangerous roads. You lie down at last, pulling a blanket over your tired limbs. The clink of distant pots and the soft mumble of guards at their posts lull you toward sleep. The wax on your upper lip feels faintly tight, familiar, and reassuring. Almost like a friend keeping watch through the night. As your breathing slows, you let your thoughts drift through memories. The children waving at the village gate, the dignitaries, sneaking glances, the smirks of rivals defeated on the tournament field. And through it all, your mustache has been there. A silly, splendid, unbreakable companion. Sleep pulls you closer and you let it. You probably wouldn't survive these harsh roads without a moment of peace now and then, and you allow yourself that kindness. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you even imagine your mustache nodding its approval, sharing the joke with you one last time. Outside, the wind rustles gently through the grass. Horses sigh in their sleep. And you, wrapped in the warmth of tradition, loyalty, and just a touch of mint-scented wax, drift away with a quiet heart. And now, as the embers of that final campfire fade, let your mind soften and your breath deepen. You have traveled far tonight, through laughter and quiet courage, through tournaments and peaceful villages, all carried gently on the proud sweep of a knight's mustache. Picture the steady rise and fall of that banner of bristles, standing guard as the world grew dark around you. There is a calm in this memory, a sense of gentle routine that anchors your heart. Even in the hardest storms, even on the longest marshes, these knights never let go of their small, silly, beautiful symbol. It was a sign that something soft could live beside something fierce, that bravery could share space with a moment of vanity, and that pride could be polished quite literally. One careful stroke at a time. Let yourself feel that steadiness now, as if your own breath were wrapped in wax and rosemary, shaped into a perfect swirl. Feel the earth beneath you, safe and solid, as if your horse's hooves still trotted faithfully through green fields. Feel the night air, cool and kind, whispering through the tent walls and carrying with it the scent of distant herbs. You are at peace here, in this world of gentle pride and gentle humor. You have a place by the fire, a place among friends, a place where even your smallest hopes are safe. So rest now. Sleep comes to carry you to dreams, where the tournaments never end. The roads are always safe and the mustache ever loyal. Ever shining, waits patiently for tomorrow's dawn. Let your breathing slow, let your muscles soften, and let a calm smile linger. Sleep well, brave listener. Sweet dreams.